Hi, I'm Ariana Albano, and this is another edition of West Side Legacy Stories. Today we're going to be talking to Toni about her life.
Hi.
Hi. So, to start off, can you tell us when you moved to West Side, or what brought you here?
Well, my mother brought me here because I was born in West Springfield. And I was born in the house that I now live in,
Wow.
the same house. And it was on a farm up in the Tatum section.
Okay.
So, and I have been living there with the exception of just a couple of years when I married, moved to Connecticut, and then when my son was a year and a half old, we moved back into the house in West Springfield.
Nice.
And
So-
I've been there ever since.
In total, how many years is that, if you could guess?
I'd say probably about, in all, maybe about 60 years.
Wow. And has it changed a lot since?
Yeah, West Springfield has changed several times since I was little. And of course, it went from the little mom and pop shops to our great big malls. And even to today, I enjoy shopping in the little stores rather than the malls. First of all, there's a lot of walking, and that is not one of my favorite things to do. But I guess as we get older, we mature, and we have to accept the modern changes of today's world.
And how much has changed that you enjoy?
Well, I enjoy that now there is a lot more of clubs and activities that get strange people together. In other words, you're not only in your own little district, you're either in this club that's in the north part of West Springfield or down in the Elm Street section, and you get to know more people, and I think you get an education from something like this.
Definitely. And are there any great legends or stories that you remember about the town?
Well, I remember one time when I was real young, I can't remember, but I think there was it was during the winter time, I remember, because there was snow on the streets, and on Route 20, there was a horse and 2 or 3 horses with these great big sleds on the back. And they were heading from the Mohawk Trail from New York to Boston.
Wow.
And that kind of stuck in my mind a lot because it was something that was very unusual.
Right.
So,
That's crazy. So, what do you remember most about your parents?
well, my parents were immigrants, and they came over here in 1913, and they first lived in New Jersey, and then they moved to West Springfield. And they bought a little shack where the house is now, and they, as a child, they had another child, they put another section onto the house. So as that, the house grew from maybe 2 rooms to 10. So I'm very proud of where I live. It's not a modern house, it's an old farmhouse, but it's very comfortable.
And have you kept it like mostly the same since
Yes,
then?
I have.
Oh,
Yes,
wow,
I
that's
have.
so cool.
I have several antiques in the house. The bedroom set that I have is, I would say, almost 100 years old. And the bedspread that I have is hand crocheted, and it was a wedding gift. And it's still on my bed. And that is about 60 years old. So,
Wow.
no, I've kept it just the way it's always been.
And what about the land? Is there still a lot of farmland where you are? or-
Yes, there's a lot of farmland. As a matter of fact, where I live, the same side of the street on Audubon Avenue, their family still lives there. My nephews,
Wow.
my great-nephews, my great-great-nephews. There's maybe about 6 or 7 houses. And we all live. We've got a big pavilion in the backyard that we get together 4 times a year. And we are really a close-knit family.
That's
We
cute.
still are.
So were you born in West Springfield?
Yes, I was.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay. So they came over and you were born, and then the house was renovated. So were you the first of your siblings, or you said the
No,
last?
my brother Peter was the oldest, and I have 6 brothers. And I'm the youngest one.
Okay.
So I'm the baby of the family, and of course I'm the only girl. So that kind of puts the end on that.
Right. Is there anything that was like special about them? I mean, we have this here. If you want to talk about them a little bit.
I had 5 brothers that were in the Second World War, and it was quite a challenge because my father had a disability from the First World War, and this airplane right here is a replica of the United States Air Force that he was in, which he was stationed in Orly Field in France. And he was in service for 6 years. And when he was discharged and he came home, the only one I had was my brother Pete and my brother Lucian, who were the 2 oldest. And then after that came Albert, Raymond, Philip, and Edmund. So 6 brothers. So instead of just 1 set of parents, I had 8.
Definitely. Were you guys all close?
Yes, yes, we were. And they all lived right there.
Wow.
In the houses that they live in, their children live in now.
And what's your earliest memory with them?
I'm trying to think now. I think probably when I went into the 1st grade, which was really stood out in my mind because, of course, my mother not being fluent in English and my father working, my youngest brother, Edmund, took me to school.
Aw.
And in doing so, my name changed from Antonia to Antoinette because that was the American version of that name.
Wow.
And it stuck with me all my school years, and
Right.
even to today.
And did you write that on your papers too?
Oh, yes, yes.
That's cute. So you said that they were older, they were like your parents. Were they protective of you?
Well, if I said to my mother that I was going to the Y for our Saturday night dance, I'd better be there, because every once in a while my girlfriend would nudge me and say, "Toni, you're on your better behavior. Your brother's standing in the doorway." And
Aw.
no matter where I went, they always checked on me to make sure that I came to no harm.
And you were there.
Yes.
You were lying, so you couldn't get away with a lot. That's cute.
No, so I'm very proud of my brothers because 3 of them were in actually dangerous places. My brother Pete was the oldest one, was an instructor down in Texas. And my brother Eddie, being the youngest one, was too young at that time. And when he went in, the war ended. So he just served his 4 years and he
Wow.
came home. So.
What about your parents? Your father, what did he do? Just the farm, worked the farm?
Well, my father was born in Italy, right outside of Rome. And when he was 12 years old, my grandmother, in Italy there was no jobs and no money. Well, my grandmother took my father and my Uncle Dominic, and they went up to France and England, and the boys worked in different factories up there to send money back to Italy for the family to survive on.
Nice.
And my father never came back to Italy till it was time for him to go into the Italian army.
Wow.
It was necessary and it was mandatory that they serve 1 year in service. So that's the reason why when he came here and he wanted to become a citizen, an American citizen, wanted to be naturalized. He enlisted in the First World War, and he was sent to Orlyfield in France. And he and my mother were separated for 6 years. He never saw my brother Lucian until he was 6 years old.
Wow.
And they moved to Rhode Island, where he had cousins. And then from there, he moved to West Springfield. And of course, that's where I got my beginning.
The legacy of your house. Nice. So, what about school? What was it like for you?
School was great because I had great friends. And I think I'm a type of a person that can make friends fairly easy. And I like to meet different people so that I can grow within conversations with them. And right now I'm very active in the West Springfield Senior Center.
Nice.
And I belong to 3 or 4 different organizations within the Senior Center. And of course, on Wednesday afternoon, I run the bingo. So that's a big deal. At the end, believe me, the lunchroom is full. So there isn't much money in it, but they all have a great time. They have their lunch, then they stay for bingo.
So, you said you were called Antoinette.
Yes,
So, did you have any other nicknames that weren't exactly your name?
just Toni. Just Toni.
And to this day,
It
you're
was
still
short
Toni.
and right to the point.
Nice. What about in school? Did people call you anything, nicknames?
No, not really. I mean, we not only knew the people in our class, because our classes were fairly small, so sometimes our classes were intermingled with different grades. So it made it good because, it was very interesting because we learned from each other.
Right.
And I think that was a big help to us.
Who are your best friends in your classes or outside of school?
Well, I grew up with a girl named Laurie Egan, and she came here from Hartford when she was in the 4th grade, and we kind of hit it off right off the bat because, of course, she was on my way to school, so I'd walk up to her house, and then we'd walk to school together. And then on the way coming home, we'd do the same thing, and her mother was such a great person that every time we came to the house, she had cookies and milk and everything for us.
Wow.
And then she sent me on my way home.
Nice.
So she was one of my best friends. Until we graduated from high school, she went on to college, and then I went on to work. So
And where did you work?
I worked, I worked several places even since I was about 16 years old. I started working at 5 and 10 stores and all the rest of the places. But when I had a bookkeeping background, and I had a job because my oldest brother, and my father worked at the Springfield Armory. So when my brother came back, he applied for a job for me. So I had got it. And the only thing is, the Waves and Wax were coming home from World War II, and they had priorities, so I
Right.
got bumped. So I had to go to Springfield Trade School to learn how to sew on a power machine. And I worked in a dress factory for 6 years, so before I got married. And then I moved to Hartford, and of course that came in handy for me because I worked in a parachute place. Parachute.
Wow.
And these parachutes were what they called rip chutes. So when the jet planes used to come in for a landing, they'd extend this, and it was ribbons.
Oh.
And there was a space in between that used to allow the air to go through, and it would slow the planes down. But then once they were used, they came back to the factory to be repaired before they could be used again. So that was a big help for me.
Wow.
So when I came back, that's when I started working in an office. And I worked as a manager for Westside Air Conditioning and Heating.
How long were you there?
How long was I there?
Yeah.
About 45 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
As a manager, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was your...
We had maybe about 17 men as servicemen, and the owner and a general manager, service manager, and one office girl that was with me. And that's when they sent me to computer school. So that was that was a plus for me.
Was that a new skill for you?
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
So it allowed us to have better control on our inventory and our sales, and of course the sales tax and all the rest of it, payroll. So it was good. It was very, very interesting, and it was exciting for me because they sent us down to Florida to school for a week. So the both of us went down for instructions. So it was good. It was very educational, and I loved it.
So you saw a lot of shift in technology, you would say then, right?
Yes.
With the computers. What did
Yeah.
you do before then?
I did a lot of bookkeeping, but it was all manual.
Right.
And I worked with an accountant in Springfield because he was more or less my advisor on taxes and how to figure out payroll taxes and sending him in quarterly. So I had, that was an education in itself. So.
That's crazy. So was that your last job, or?
No, from there, I got he had kind of slacked off a little, his business. So I left and I went to work for the town of West Springfield.
Wow.
I worked in a collector's office, and I worked upstairs in, I can't think of it, the assessor's office.
Okay.
And they take care of all the land and dimensions and taxes and their motor vehicle taxes, excise taxes. And then from there, I went down to the collector's office. And I worked in the collector's office part-time because of the fact that my husband got sick and I couldn't work a full week. So I used to work just 2 or 3 hours a week, and I was home taking care of him until he passed away.
Wow. When was this?
This was in 1961.
Okay. And that was your last job? Did you retire from
Yes,
there?
I retired from there.
Wow. And you were there for how long?
I was there for 11 years.
Would you say that retirement was exciting, or?
Well, everyone told me, I don't know, you're going to be bored. But to this day, I still can't find enough time in a day.
Right.
So it's, no, retirement is no day is the same. You wake up and you say, well, I'm going to do this today, but it never happens. So
cool.
there's always something different.
What else do you do? I know you said you were a part of the senior center and other clubs. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Crafts. I've done a lot of crafts. I've done porcelain dolls. I've done teddy bears. I've done quilting, knitting, crocheting. Just recently, we were working with a concern from Mexico, and they asked us if we'd make these 6-inch squares to be put together for Afghans, for students that were in the mountains in Mexico that were very cold, and they didn't have heat in these places because, of course, I guess Mexico is a warm territory.
Right.
And they make these Afghans for these students, these college students. And we made enough of 6-inch squares to make a single-size Afghan to send down to Mexico. But we're still in the process of making them, and when we do, we will ship them to this couple and then they take and assemble them, and they send them down to Mexico,
Oh wow, that's very
which is
unique.
fun,
Yeah.
which is a lot, because no square is the same, because there's 12 of us in the knitting class.
Right.
So no square is the same and not its same color, but hopefully it'll be put together.
It will. It'll all come together. It'll look cute, definitely. But is that all you do? Do you have do you hang out with your family a lot? Is there
Oh yes, I do.
maybe
And,
the babysitting of all the nieces and nephews?
well, they do. My door is open. It's the family home. It always has been. And when they come down, they don't knock. They just walk in. But of course, that's the way I want it, because it is their house just as much as it is mine. And by having the house, it has allowed me to do a lot more financially than I would have if I had a mortgage, a heavy mortgage, and things like that.
So, what about historical periods? Is there anything in the time that you've lived that's really stood out to you?
No, I think there's just adjustments that you have to make to the modern technology and things like this. And it's just, they say that you graduate from high school and that's it. But it isn't. It's a constant education your whole life, if you want it to be. If you don't, then, you're just bored.
What about phones and computers? Have you had trouble keeping up with them?
Computers, yes. But I'm lucky because my son has an apartment upstairs. And of course, when I get stuck, go down at the bottom of the stairs and yell upstairs, I'm in trouble. What again, Ma? No, so telephones, as far as telephones, no.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your teen years?
Well, most of my teen years, where I lived, it was isolated. So I was the only girl in that area. There was mostly all boys. And usually my teen years were focused around high school. So we used to, and of course my girlfriend Laurie, who was there, and then I met, in high school, I met another girlfriend of mine, Nancy Maloney, and she was a year younger than I was, but she was of a vivacious type of a person. She was a cheerleader. She was into everything, where I was more or less kind of on the quiet side, like the choir and different things like that, the prom committee, but as far as I was concerned, I was more or less of a quiet type person. But she's the one that brought out my background, believe me, because she was a fireball. And we were friends up until the time we got married.
Wow.
And but of course by that time, when we graduated from high school, of course I went my way, I went to work, and Laurie went off to college, and she became a teacher. And so basically we kind of lost contact with each other. But as far as my teen years, we used to have the center of West Springfield used to be full with us, because we had the Majestic Theater that we used to go to, and the YMCA used to have dances, and Mittenegg Park was a salvation for us in the wintertime and in the summer. In the wintertime, where the tennis courts are now, they used to be an ice skating rink.
Wow.
And of course, we all used to meet there and talk and laugh and have fun. We had a warming house with a fire pit in it, so it made it nice. If we got cold, we used to go in there. And then during the summer months, we had the great big swimming pool that was just down below. And it had a wading pool for the little ones. It had a bathhouse, and the swimming pool was a great big cement swimming pool, and it was all decorated in brick. The lifeguards used to sit up on a brick wall that was like a bridge. And that's where the water used to empty out because the pool was fed by a brook. And the
wow.
brook kept it cold. So you didn't stay in that water very long. But it was enjoyable because all of us were mostly all teenagers. And we used to get together from Mint Egg, from down on the Merrick section, and from all over. So we really enjoyed that. And then the center of West Springfield, we used to go to these little coffee shops, and we'd have coffee and a Coke, because none of us really liked coffee at the time. But it was still a place for us to get together.
Nice.
And we used to hang around on the common there on Elm Street, and there was benches there. And we used to go on to the main common, and we used to have, there was picnic tables there, so we used to have picnics there and things like that. That was our enjoyment. So because at that time in our life, with the wars going on and everything, there wasn't an abundant amount of finances available. So we had to really make our own fun. And we depended on each other to do something like that. So that was my teen years.
What about dating when you were a teen?
Well, I didn't do too much dating because with 6 brothers around, you can't really go. I used to go roller skating up the riverside, and we used to have, the football games naturally, like you do now, and the basketball games and the baseball games, and we all used to, go to all those, which kept us quite busy. But during the summertime was when we each went our own way, and it was kind of rough because you didn't see each other until September when school started up again.
Yeah.
Transportation was a problem because none of us had cars. So you had to either associate with someone that was in walking distance. And we used to go down into the woods, swim in the Westfield River, and believe it or not, some of us used to ice skate on the Westfield River during the winter months.
Wow.
But we had to be careful because it had to be either up above or below the rapids because they never froze over.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun because we didn't go too many places, but we had our own local recreation fund. So I really enjoyed that. And even to today, if we see one another, we'll start talking about old times. And it just goes back to these different places like Mint Egg Park and things like this. So that was my teen years.
What about your husband? Can you tell us a little more about him?
Well, I met my husband up to Riverside Park, and his name was Ray Blythe. And he came in with his cousin, and I was with my girlfriend, Ann. And Ann kind of fell in love with Alan, who was Ray's cousin. So, of course, that forced me to go into to associate with Ray. So the first time I saw him, he asked me to skate couples. So when it was almost over, he says, "I'm taking you home tonight." And I said, "Oh, no, you're not." He says, "What do you mean? No, I'm not." I says, "No." I says, "You're not." I says, "I came with Ann," and I says, "I'll go home with Ann." He says, "No, no." He says, "I'm going to take you home." I said, "No, no, you're not." Well, unbeknown to me, this was all planned ahead of time by the other 3.
Oh gosh.
So when we got out of the roller skating rink, Alan had gone down to the parking lot, got his car, brought it up, and I went to get in the back seat of his car, and Ray was sitting in the back seat. So he had planned it all along.
Aw.
So we took Ann home, and of course I had parked my car down to Ann's because she lived in the south end of Springfield. And I drove my car home. So maybe it went on for a little while, and then he finally said to me, come up with Ann. He says, I want to take you home because I want to see where you live. Well, we had gotten acquainted at the roller skate rink at the time because we used to skate couples in reverse and the dances and all the rest of it. He was excellent roller skater. And ice skater, I don't think anybody could touch him. But we got to know each other, and it went on for about 2 or 3 years before we finally started dating and going out, just the two of us.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and he found out where I lived, so it was easy for him to come up. So, but, then, well, of course, we fell in love, and we got married. And we had one boy, and that's the love of my life.
Oh.
But of course, he's a grown man now, so there's no more hugging and kissing like we used to when he was younger. So, we were together. We're married and together for 54 years. And he finally got cancer of the lungs.
Wow.
And he was a smoker, which I didn't like, but you can't stop it.
Right.
And he did develop cancer, lung cancer. And he did work with asbestos, coating asbestos, and it was the raw asbestos. So between smoking and the fiberglass, he developed lung cancer, and he passed away. But he was sick for 4 years.
Wow.
And that's the reason why I had to quit work. I only worked a part-time job, and I stayed home, took care of him till he passed away. So, and my son and I have, grown closer.
Right.
But it's very hard for a mother and a son to make ends meet. But even now, even to today, we're very close.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's my life.
That's beautiful. So you have one son?
Just one son.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he lives
his
in
name
Florida
is
now?
Albert.
Oh, nice.
But his nickname is Skip because his grandfather, he was named after his grandfather, Blythe. And of course, we couldn't call Albert and Albert because they both answered. So my father-in-law came up with the idea, okay, we're going to call him Skip. So that's, even to today, that's who he's referred to.
Oh, wow.
So that's basically most of my life. So, but now I live in the house that I was born in, and we enjoy it. So, and he has his own apartment upstairs, and I live downstairs. So, of course, we share our meals. But that's all. He's off on his own, and I'm off on my own.
So, can you tell us about your husband, or not your husband, I'm sorry. Can you tell us about your father?
Okay, my father is Giuseppe Di Stefano, and my mother's name was Benedetta. And they're the ones that started this whole clan in West Springfield. Because when my father built that house, there was no way that he was ever going to move out of it, and my mother either. So, my father being a wounded veteran from World War I, when my brothers got married and moved out of the house to their own houses and families, I basically had to leave my son with my mother and father, who were babysitters, and I went to work, and my husband went to work, and we helped support them and support the house that we live in.
Wow.
So, and they lived in the house until they passed, but they both passed away. So.
Who do you think was the most important person in your life?
I think my father, because I think he had more of an education than my mother did. And of course, by being in service and him having the experience of working, I think I learned a lot from my father. Because I remember when I was in grammar school, in the morning, my mother would get me dressed. She'd put me on a hassock sitting in front of my father because, of course, his legs were bad from his injury. And I used to sit on the hassock, and he used to brush my hair and braid it for me to go to school. And I think he made the biggest influence.
Right.
And he was a great influence to my son, because babysitting for him was great, because my husband and I worked. And of course, with my father's very small pension, it made it easier for them because we paid them to babysit. They didn't want to take it,
Right.
but we forced it on them because it was something that we had to pay for anyway. So it worked out for both families. My husband and I, and my son, and my father and my mother. So we are the DeStefano clan up in the Tatum section of West Springfield.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. What about the happiest moment in your life? Is there something that really sticks out?
I think the happiest time of my life was when I got married and when my son was born, because he wanted a boy so bad. And my mother kept saying to me, "No, you're going to have a girl. You're going to have a girl." And he kept saying, "Don't say that." So when I had a boy, he was thrilled, and my father-in-law was even more excited than my husband. So I think that's basically one of the most exciting parts of my life. So,
What are you most proud of?
you know, I really can't say that there was anything that I was really. No, I changed my mind. I was the proudest when Father Joe at St. Anne's Church asked me if I wanted to be a Eucharistic minister.
Wow.
And I said to him, "But aren't there usually men?" He says, "Well," he says, "we've been breaking into it." He says, "And if you want to be the first female St. Anne's Church has," he says, "I'm offering it to you." So I think that I was a Eucharistic minister down there for probably about 15 years.
Wow.
And I think I was in one of the first crowds. We had to attend classes, and there was only 2 of us that were women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe about 15 or 17 years that I was a Eucharistic minister. Wow. And I loved it. I loved it. It just gave me an inner feeling.
Right. Of value, definitely.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Did that teach you anything or like open the doors to new ideas?
Well, actually, Father Joe Massaro was ordained a priest, and he came to St. Anne's as his first parish. And we were just teenagers. And my girlfriend Gloria and myself and a few of the other girls, he formed a girls' baseball team. And he was our coach. So when we were in high school, we had the first female girls softball team.
Wow.
And we finally got to the point where we played with some of the Springfield parishes and made it a contest. So he made a big impression on my life,
Right.
on all our lives. And we thought that it was God from heaven that came down to us, because he taught us so much. I mean, not only in religion, but in sportsmanship and things like that. So, he always made things pleasant for us, And he was a factor, one of the main factors in my life. And he went away. He left the parish, and I got married, and we moved to Hartford. When I came back, He was the pastor of our church again. So
Wow.
it made it nice for us. We had a good time until he passed away.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the church, you know, had gotten, they didn't have a permanent minister or a pastor. They had people from Mount Carmel Church in Springfield and a few of the other parishes that used to come over and say our masses during Sunday. So we missed him very much. Even to this day, we miss him. So we talk about him so much.
Oh, that's cute. You have him in your memory.
Yes.
That's
Very
awesome.
pleasant memories.
So, like lessons you've learned, is there one that really sticks out to you throughout your life?
Pardon?
Any lessons that you've learned throughout your life that really stick out to you?
I don't really know. I can't think offhand. But when I was younger, I tried to be something that I really wasn't.
Right.
And I tried to do things that other people did and so on and so forth. But I was never content about it. So finally, my father said to me one day, "Why aren't you being yourself?" He says, "Be proud of who you are and what you've become." And I think from then on in, I had a whole new life
Right.
by being myself and doing things that I wanted to do and things that I wanted to accomplish. And I never missed going to college, to tell you the truth, because I had so many options open to me in my lifetime
Yeah.
that I felt that, you know, that was the beginning right there. So,
That's cute. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
not really. I'm trying to think. No, not, well, you know, I don't know if you remember the outside graduations at Vettsfield.
No.
No? Well, when we graduated from the Cowing School on the corner of Park and Elm Street,
Uh-huh.
our graduation wasn't down to the Coliseum. It was up at Vets Field, and they
Wow.
put the bleachers up and everything else. We had the daisy chains. We had everything that you people have, and it was just an outdoor ceremony.
That's cute.
And that's where our graduations used to be, was up at Vets Field. So
Wow.
that was one of my big things in life. Because actually none of my brothers graduated from high school because some of them went in service before they had a chance to graduate.
Right.
And that picture right there was at the old high school, and they got their diplomas. They were honorary diplomas.
Nice.
So they were very pleased about it. And even to this day, well, now my brothers are all gone.
Right.
They're all passed away. But I think they were so pleased and so elated by getting a high school diploma. It meant so much to them. And that poster was in the high school at that time, that original poster. And my brother Lucian, who was right down in here, he had a war essential job, and he was married and had 2 children.
Wow.
So he didn't go into service, but his heart was broken. So he wanted to, he wanted to be part of it, but it just didn't come his way. So, and this airplane is a model of the airplane that my father was a mechanic on when he was in the First World War. And he and another fella used to work, and they used to take these cables, as you can see, these little cables, and they had to be a certain tension. So one fella would be on one side, and my father would be on the other side, and they would tighten these so that they'd be equal, so that the wings would be equal spaced here so that the airplane wouldn't wobble.
Right.
And how my father had gotten hurt was the other fellow was heavier than he was.
Oh, jeez.
So he went, there was a lieutenant that got into the airplane, and my father says it is wound up, because that's how they used to start these. They'd wind it up with the propeller. And what he would do is he said, don't touch the start button because it's wound up. Well, he said, you're going to tell me, a lieutenant, that I can't do? He did. He hit it. What happened was this fella being heavier than my father, the plane tipped this way and he fell off. And then by doing so, the plane tipped this way and this top of the wing came down and hit my father in the middle of the back. Wow. And he sustained a back injury. So that's he was discharged after that. But he loved the Air Force, and in his dying day, he loved airplanes. That was his major. So that's the story of my mom and dad. But they struggled, but they brought up all of us, the 7 of us, plus my grandmother lived with us.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I can't believe you have the actual plane. That's so cool.
Well, this here was, it's actually, it sits on a base and it's a radio. Underneath it is a radio.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's sitting on one of my end tables. And I kept it, and I wouldn't let anybody touch it. The kids would come over and want to pick it up.
Right.
But I said, oh no, that's something you don't touch. So that's why it's intact. Otherwise, it would have been flying around my house.
Yeah, but they'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's so cute. Is there anything else that you wanted to get to?
Not really.
Okay.
I think that about takes care of it all.